All right, let's jump right into this explainer. If you track global defense developments at all, you know that following the flow of military hardware tells us exactly where the tectonic plates of geopolitics are shifting. Today, we're unpacking a massive move by India, exporting the BrahMos missile system that is literally redrawing the map of defense exports and regional security in Asia.
$375 million. That's the price tag for the first batch of missiles that were just delivered to the Philippines. Now, while that is a whole lot of money, I really want us to look past the financial transaction itself. This isn't just a business deal, you know? It's a huge geopolitical statement. It signals a completely new era in international defense relationships. But to really grasp why that number carries so much weight, we need to understand the hardware.
So what exactly did they buy? The BrahMos isn't just any weapon. It's a ramjet supersonic cruise missile, born from a massive joint venture between India's DRDO and Russia's NPO Mashina Stroniaya. And the absolutely crucial thing to remember here is its capability. It is widely considered the fastest, most lethal anti-ship cruise missile in the world. It is a total game changer for naval defense. So how did this incredibly advanced tech make its way from India to the Philippines?
Well, here's how we're going to break it all down today. First, we'll look at the BrahMos milestone, then trace the timeline of the deal, unpack India's strategic shift, zoom out to global perspectives, and finally, look ahead at the future of BrahMos.
Okay, Section 1, the BrahMos milestone.
This whole thing really centers on the recent delivery of 3 shore-based batteries of the BrahMos system to the Philippines. That was the moment a signed piece of paper became a physical reality. The key players negotiating this transfer were the governments of India and the Philippines, facilitated by BrahMos Aerospace Corporation. But there's a sort of unspoken catalyst here, right? And that's the incredibly tense environment in the South China Sea. The Philippines is dealing with some intense, overlapping territorial claims involving the Chinese People's Liberation Army Navy, the Plan. Manila went looking for this specific advanced system to establish a credible deterrent in the middle of those maritime disputes.
Moving on to Section 2. The timeline of the deal.
Fun fact, the name BrahMos is actually a mashup of 2 rivers, the Brahmaputra in India and the Moska in Russia. The joint venture was formed way back in 1998, and originally it was just meant to equip the Indian armed forces. India has historically been known as the giant arms importer, not really a creator of high-tech systems. They had their first test flight in 2001. But it wasn't until 2022 that the Philippines contract was officially signed, leading to that massive first delivery in 2024. And this timeline perfectly highlights India's incredible evolution. They went from just buying weapons from other countries to building them internally to now providing elite defense tech to other sovereign nations.
Which brings us to Section 3, India's strategic shift.
For decades, India has run this Act East policy. Historically, it was a very soft power approach, focusing mostly on trade, economics, and cultural ties with Southeast Asia. But now, they're literally weaponizing it. By exporting deadly anti-ship missiles, India is pivoting hard. They are now providing hard security architecture and advanced weapons to the region. It's a huge graduation from just being an economic partner to being a serious security provider.
And New Delhi's ambitions do not stop there. 35,000 crores. That is their massive defense export target for 2025. Remember, the Philippines deal was $375 million, and that specific contract completely shattered a major psychological barrier. It proved to the world, and honestly to India itself, that they can successfully market and deliver world-class weapons. And now that they've proven it, they're getting serious interest from other nations. Countries like Vietnam and Indonesia are now looking very closely at what BrahMos could do for them.
At the end of the day, this all boils down to a counter-encirclement strategy. Think of Asian geopolitics like a giant chess match. China has long supplied arms to Pakistan, right on India's western border. So, from New Delhi's perspective, arming the Philippines is a strategic mirror. By placing advanced weapons in the South China Sea, right in China's maritime backyard, India is executing a classic counter-encirclement play. It's using defense exports for actual geopolitical balance, not just for profit.
All right, Section 4, global perspectives and some of the hurdles involved.
The global reaction to this is super fascinating. The US and its allies are basically silently applauding the move. Why? Because putting BrahMos in the Philippines fortifies the first island chain, a crucial defensive line in the Pacific, and it does it without requiring direct American involvement. But man, the logistics of pulling this off were a nightmare. Because it's a joint venture, exporting it requires explicit approval from Russia. And amidst the war in Ukraine and massive Western sanctions, India had to navigate an absolute diplomatic minefield. They had to figure out these incredibly complex financial mechanisms to pay Russia without accidentally triggering CAATSA, which is the U.S. law that sanctions countries for buying Russian weapons. It was a massive diplomatic headache, but they somehow pulled it off.
Let's wrap up with Section 5, the future of BrahMos.
The developers aren't just sitting back. BrahMos Aerospace is currently deep into building the BrahMos-NG, the next generation. They're taking the most lethal anti-ship missile out there and making it even better. The new design is going to be lighter and stealthier, making it way harder for enemy radar to pick up. And because it's lighter, it's actually going to be compatible with fighter jets, specifically India's Tejas aircraft. Having that air launch capability is going to make the next-gen BrahMos incredibly attractive on the global export market.
But honestly, even the current ground-based system is just staggering in terms of strategic leverage. 300 kilometers. That is the effective range of a shore-based battery. Just by parking these on the Philippine coast, it instantly creates a 300-kilometer no-go zone for any hostile warships. It's a brilliant example of asymmetric deterrence. A relatively small investment by a smaller nation creates this massive, impenetrable shield that even the largest navies have to respect.
So, to lock all this in, keep these two phrases in mind: Hard Power Act East and supersonic anti-ship deterrence. These perfectly capture the whole strategic shift we've been talking about today. It's India moving away from just cultural diplomacy and leaning directly into lethal, high-speed security solutions.
Pulling it all together, here are your 4 main takeaways. BrahMos Aerospace is the joint venture making the hardware. Counter-Encirclement is the strategic geopolitical play. Defense exports represent India's new economic frontier. And the South China Sea dispute is the volatile arena driving all this demand. Those are the 4 pillars of this entire development.
I'll leave you with this to chew on. As more and more nations realize they can buy a 300-kilometer shield for a fraction of the cost of building a massive navy, how is the spread of this kind of asymmetric deterrence going to reshape the balance of power in the South China Sea and even beyond? It's a fascinating question, and for sure one we'll be watching closely as this tech spreads. Thanks for tuning into this explainer. Keep asking questions, and we'll see you next time.